injustices that are inflicted upon us as African Americans, you just wait a minute and it's going to move on into your community. And we have seen that. Because there have been white young men and white mentally ill men who have been killed. So that's why this becomes a community issue. You know, we've got to stop this. We've got to stop this violence. I want to also share with you, I just happened to be in an environment last week where someone had a copy of, this is an Ejima magazine cover. It was published in 1975 by the Portland State University Black Student Union. And there was an article in here. And what was it about? Police violence. We formed what was called the Black Justice Committee in this community. Some of you may know Baruti Arthuri, myself, I think we were both co-chairs of the Black Justice Committee. We demanded an inquest. We met with the U.S. Attorney for Oregon, who was Sid Lezak at the time. And there was an investigation, but you know what happened. You know what the outcome was. As I looked at this, I couldn't believe this was 35 years ago, because these were some of the demands. That the officer who killed Ricky Johnson be expelled from the police department and brought to trial for murder. Number two, that the hearings regarding Ricky Johnson's murder would be open to the public to prevent what we call back then a whitewash. Undercover agents must be withdrawn from the black community since recent events have proved that they do not prevent crimes, they commit crimes. Yes, there were people who we knew were undercover in our community. Listen to number 4, a massive recruitment effort must be undertaken by the police department to recruit and hire black officers to serve in the black community. Little Frederick, you must have been reading my notes. Okay? In light of the recent killing, we call for a reopening of the cases of Kenny Allen, Charles Menifee, and Joe Hopkins. Number 6, the state Senate must appoint a committee to investigate this rash of killings by Portland police. See, we're talking about 1975. We're talking 35 years ago. So as we call for an investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, we stand on the fact that in this city, there has been a history of black men being killed by the Portland Police Bureau. And see, so we've got to look broader than just what we just experienced with Aaron. We've got to look at this pattern. And that's how we can begin to make them understand that something is terribly wrong. The other thing I want to close with is, a couple of days ago, I went to the trial, the last day of the trial, of the 12-year-old girl who was beat up by the police. And I can tell you, there are some things, and I want people to be very clear about this. When we begin to challenge the system, people will try to deflect you. And all of a sudden, the victim becomes the perpetrator. So let's be very clear. With this incident that happened with this 12-year-old girl, her attorney was brilliant in his closing arguments because he brought up the fact that the officer who punched her in the face and punched her in the chest several times, he did not tell the truth on the stand. He also called out the fact that there were some procedures in the training manual, and he talked about them, that this officer did not follow. So when we begin to look at this across the spectrum, because we know that there are people, you know, who are being not only killed, but brutalized on a daily basis. being intimidated, being challenged. And this is all a part of this. You know, so we've got to go after it full force. And so I want to just close by reading another quote to you from Bishop Desmond Tutu. When we look squarely at injustice and get involved, we actually feel less pain, not more, because we overcome the gnawing guilt and despair that festers under our numbness. We clean the wound, our own and others, and it can finally heal. All of us experience fear, but when we confront and acknowledge it, we are able to turn it into courage. Being courageous does not mean never being scared. It means acting as you know you must, even though you are undeniably afraid. As Lou said, you know, we are in an occupied situation, you know, young black men in particular. You have to muster up the courage when confronted with someone who could take your life to make sure that you don't do anything to escalate that. Because all it takes is you jerking away and all of a sudden you're resisting arrest.
That's right, that's right.
Talking back, you're resisting arrest. Responding to somebody pulling your hair, all of a sudden you're resisting arrest. So let's hope that we stay together, and the next time we call a rally, bring your neighbors, bring your friends. See, we don't want people to show up when something has happened. You know, we want people to be here so that we can prevent it from happening again. And the only way we can do that is together. So thank
you. As Dr. Bethel so eloquently put it, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And so if our goals are to reform the police bureau, to get justice for our community, we as community members cannot be in it for the short term. We've got to make a commitment that we are here until justice is done.
That's right.
And I want to provide my personal thanks because I know that the ministers of our Ghana Ministerial Alliance, they don't get paid to step up when there's a community crisis. Nobody comes up and says, we'll give you a couple of extra bucks if you would go and talk to the community. Nobody does that. But we have more men in our community who, when they see an injustice, they draw a line in the sand and say, this is unacceptable. Now, you may have watched the media over the last couple of weeks. The first week, the media was all about how horrible this tragedy was. The media framed it in a way that it was clear that there was empathy for Aaron Campbell's family and for the situation that had taken place. But guess what? What a difference 2 weeks made. Because if you've been paying attention, what you saw this week was, what is wrong with that community? Why would anybody want to be a Portland police officer? If you've been paying attention, all the letters you saw to the editor this week have been about, what is wrong with those people out in the community? Don't they know how hard it is to be a police officer? Well, I can tell you what, I know that it's easier to have empathy for people. It's easier to engage people in real dialogue rather than approaching people as if they're the enemy. I know that we could have police officers who treat community members with dignity and respect, whether you live in Northeast or Southwest.